Hi everybody, my name is Ashley Kwiatek. I am the Volunteer and Outreach Coordinator with the Napa County Resource Conservation District. I'm really excited to be here with y'all today on this third Saturday hike, virtually, to talk about one of my favorite animals in the world, the raven. I'm here at Rector Ridge today, and so far I've seen a couple of ravens fly overhead, and I've heard a couple more calling back and forth. So stay tuned and we'll see what else we can find. Not only is this a great place to watch ravens playing in the wind and practicing their barrel rolls, but it's also a great place to get some really magnificent views of Napa Valley. Oftentimes people confuse ravens and crows, so here are a couple of tips on how to figure out what it is you're looking at. First thing you can really look at is where you are. Are you in your backyard? Are you living in the middle of a city? Are you at a city park? Or are you someplace like this out at Rector Ridge where you're kind of on the outskirts of that urban area? If you're in a more wild place, most likely you're going to find a raven. They need a little bit more room to roam. They are bigger birds, more room to fly and roam. And crows are typically pretty urban centered. The second thing that you can really look at is if you can figure out sort of the silhouette of their tail. So tails are a really easy way to tell the difference between a crow and a raven. A crow is going to have very much a straight edge tail on the bottom, so it's going to be kind of this triangle shape that comes from the Johannes's body up here at the top. And if you look at a raven, it's going to be a little bit more of a wedge shape. So it'll still come to a point at the body, but then it'll have a little bit more of a rounded edge on the bottom. So that's definitely one way that you can tell the difference between the two. Another really great way is to look at their beaks. So crows have a very sort of conical shaped beak. It just comes to a very, very nice straight point. It doesn't really have much of a shape to it except sort of a cone. But if you look at a raven has a little bit, we can kind of do a demonstration here. They have a little bit of a beak that goes out and down. And it kind of helps them out in the wild. I see a raven flying over us over here. So before we get too much further, let's take a second and talk about some of the general overlying life history of a raven. So this time of year in July is typically when ravens are going to start, little baby ravens are going to start fledging from their nests, trying to learn how to fly and sort of leave the nest, which is pretty typical for a lot of other birds as well. But as they start to leave their nest and start to fly around and spread their wings, another really exciting thing that they're doing is learning how to communicate. And ravens are really, really wonderful birds that have over 100 different calls and different noises that mean different things. They have their own language, which is one of the reasons I find them so fascinating. You can find ravens that will communicate based on this, combination of sort of calls, similar like a songbird. They have like a little bit of a song, sort of just a regular like alarm call, sort of a very rapid call, very rapid noise, a noise that's called quirking, knocking, and just sort of these other weird murmurs and things like that. If you have the opportunity to just sit and listen to a couple of ravens talking to each other, you'll really notice these intricacies of how they call back and forth. And if you go to different areas, the way that they talk is going to be different because they have these juvenile groups that they go to. Once they start to fledge from the nest and they start flying a little bit and they start communicating with their parents, about 5 or 6 months into, from when they start fledging, they'll sort of join what's called a juvenile roost or a communal group. And when they're in that juvenile roost, that's one of the few times you're going to see a lot of ravens all together at the same time. Most of the time, ravens are very solitary creatures, but when they're juveniles, for about 2 years, they'll spend some time in a communal roost. And in that communal roost, they will extend their vocabulary, all of their words, all of their sounds, all of their different forms of communication, and also learn how to do their mating rituals. So as they're learning all of these different communication tools, oftentimes one raven will rise to the top and will be an alpha raven, an alpha male typically, in that raven juvenile communal roost. And that raven will often kind of disperse all the rest of those communal juveniles to different areas and kind of send them forth. They all gather information, and then they can come back to that communal roost and communicate with each other. Oh, there's carrion over here, there's food to eat over here, there's shiny things over here, there's, you know, such and such over in this area. And they communicate with each other, and they can, you know, go to those different places as they come back and share that information, which is just absolutely fascinating to think of a bird doing something like that. And, you know, as they kind of go through that 1 to 2 year communal roost, they, again, like I mentioned, start learning their mating rituals. And it's often in those communal groups that they will find their mate for life. Ravens do mate for life, although if something were to happen, like one were to die or, you know, get hit by a car or something like that, they will very quickly find a new mate. But they do typically remain together for their whole life. Which is why if you do see ravens together, usually you'll see either one raven, 2 ravens, or a bunch of ravens, you know, 7 or more. And that's either going to be an adult raven flying around looking for food, or kind of protecting a nest. 2 together as a mated pair, usually. Or, you know, if you have that bigger group, 7 or more, that's going to be one of your juvenile communal roosts. So although I have a great love for ravens, that is not always the case here in the United States and in other parts of the world as well. Ravens are opportunistic, and they are what we call opportunistic omnivores. So they'll eat plants, they'll eat animals. They aren't usually going to go out and hunt down an animal, but if they find an animal on the side of the road, what we call carrion, they're definitely going to go ahead and eat all of that. So although I love ravens so much, there are a lot of, even today, really negative perceptions and really grounded in real science. So if you go and look at some things that are playing out in Idaho right now, they have a sage grouse that is federally listed as endangered, I believe. It might not be federally listed, but it is a species of concern. And ravens, because they're opportunistic and they will eat almost anything, they like to eat eggs. So they will prey on the sage grouse eggs. They will kind of chase the sage grouse away from their nest and then, you know, prey on those eggs and eat the eggs, which has really resulted in this plummet in the population of the sage grouse. So the reason that that's happening is as we as humans have changed the landscape of our more wild places. You know, we've sort of created settlements in places that, you know, for, you know, hundreds of thousands of years, we're not really able to support people. So as we've changed those wild lands and changed the habitat of ravens, they have sort of moved into different areas. So if you look back into stories and histories and things like that in different parts of the country, you won't really find ravens in a lot of places. But as we change our landscapes and as we change our wild lands, we are finding that more and more we're seeing ravens move into areas that they haven't been before. And as they move into those new areas, they have new food sources and easier food sources. They're not going to wait around. You know, a raven flying around up in the sky is not going to continue searching for, you know, something that got hit by a car or something that another animal has taken down if they have the opportunity to just fly over, scare the sage grouse away, and have this beautiful meal of eggs. So again, a lot of it is attributed to us as humans and how we have settled this world and impacted the landscapes of this world. But ravens are not always a good presence. And although I love to watch them and I love to see them all over, it is important to note that as we move into a changing climate and a changing landscape and a changing settlement pattern of humans, we are seeing sort of a negative increase in raven presence in areas where they haven't historically been. That is affecting a lot of other native species. And it's similar to things like all these grasses you see behind me. Many of them are non-native, and they're doing just fine here, but they were not here originally. And oftentimes with all of these non-native grasses, we don't see our native grasses come back anymore. So ravens have sort of that similar native versus non-native impact on the landscape that is something that scientists have been watching extensively, and is maybe not something that we can reverse at this point in time. Unfortunately, the only ravens that I am seeing or hearing are on the other side of Rector Reservoir, so we are not going to be able to really see or hear them. I can see them through my binoculars, sort of playing in the wind a little bit, but I can just barely hear them when the wind is blowing just right. So unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to be able to get any videos of ravens from here at Rector Ridge, but we'll see what we can find somewhere else. So we weren't able to find any ravens nice and close at Rector Ridge so we could listen and watch them, but I am now here up at Bothe-Napa Valley State Park near Calistoga, and there is a mated pair of ravens that lives and likes to hang out down by the visitor center and the trailhead to Redwood Trail, and they like to fly up and down Ritchie Creek as well, and I've heard them a couple times so far, so let's listen into those raven sounds.